Hello, On the Rockers. We are making the miserable not so miserable with an On the Rocks helping with the leads of the touring production of Les Miserables, Valjean and Javert, hot off the barricade, with Nick Cartell from Jesus Christ Superstar, fan of the opera, and more, with Preston Truman Boyd from Young Frankenstein, Sunset Boulevard, Kiss Me Kate, Jersey Boys, and more, with me. Never on Broadway unless you count the alleyway in the back. Your favorite host with the sassy most, raise a glass, let the drinks begin. It's On the Rocks on Broadway.
Thank you for being
Boulevard.
Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death.
I'd like to propose a toast.
This is On the Rocks with Alexander, where I drink with your favorite celebrities as we talk about fashion, entertainment, pop culture, reality TV, and, well, that's about it. So pop a cork, lean back, and raise a glass to On the Rocks.
Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Lord have mercy, it's gonna be a bumpy night. Buttons and bows and pantyhose. On the Rocks podcast, a place where we're too glad to give a damn. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at On the Rocks on Air, and on Facebook, On the Rocks Radio Show. Send me an email. Book me for a pride, wedding, funeral, quinceanera, bris. I don't care. I'll show up. Info at ontherocksradioshow.com. Also send us your comments. You've been doing so good at sending us guest suggestions who have come and shown up. Info at ontherocksradioshow.com. The show's presented by Straw Hut Media. You can watch and or listen to our now over 320 episodes at ontherocksradioshow.com. You can watch us on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, on the Outlet.tv app, Facebook Watch if you're still on Facebook, streaming with pride on SVTV and on Channel 31 on the East Coast. All right, let's get this show on the road. Let's go to France. 130 million people have viewed Les Miserables worldwide to 53 countries in 22 languages. There's been, of course, televised concert versions that we watched over and over. And, well, there was a movie, but anyway. Les Mis is taking the U.S. by storm, currently on its national tour. Currently in Southern California, by the way, at the Pantages Theater until September 10th, and then at the Seagram Center for the Arts, and I have a story about that because I performed there once, wasn't asked back, so from September 19th to October 1st, then on to San Diego, and then back up north in California, and then everywhere. Let's take a look at Les Miserables.
Experience the breathtaking production that leaves both audiences and critics awestruck. Les Miserables.
September 19th through October 1st at Seagram Center for the Arts. Tickets available at scfta.org today.
Get those tickets. And it's Les Mis like you've not seen it. We're definitely going to talk about that all. Please welcome Nick Cartell, making a triumphant return to the role he inhabited for 2.5 years pre-pandemic. Nick will once again playing prisoner 24601, a.k.a. Jean Valjean, on the national tour of Les Miserables. There he is backstage reading like Dolly books. Like, I just love it. Previously seen on Broadway in Paramore, the first musical produced by Cirque du Soleil, by the way, where he was standby for and performed for the 3 male lead roles. We're going to talk about standbying and understudying and all that. Also appeared in Scandalous, a musical written by Today Show host Kathy Lee Gifford. Remember Regis and Kathy Lee? He can be heard on the original Broadway cast recording of that, by the way. He made his Broadway debut in the Tony-nominated 2012 revival of Jesus Christ Superstar, understudying and performing the roles of Jesus, Judas, and High Priest Annas. Sorry. I did that on purpose. He also toured the U.S. and Canada in The Phantom of the Opera. His pictures on Instagram from that tour are a lot of fun. He has sung with South Coast Symphony, the Phoenix Symphony, and as a member of the critically acclaimed group, the Broadway Boys. In 2019, he performed his first solo show, bringing it home to a sold-out room at the iconic Feinstein's 54 Below. And together with his wife, they produced Broadway Fights Ovarian Cancer, a benefit concert raising funds and awareness for ovarian cancer research. Please welcome Nick Cartell.
Thank you.
Also joining us, perhaps the whitest name I've heard in history, Preston Truman Boyd.
True.
He's on the national tour as Javert. Previously, he was a member of the Broadway cast of Kiss Me Kate, The Play That Goes Wrong, Sunset Boulevard, She Loves Me, On the 20th Century, Bullets Over Broadway, and Big Fish. What a name dropper, by the way. He was a principal actor in 2 national Broadway tours and Jersey Boys, and as the monster in Young Frankenstein, which we're going to talk about that travel from ensemble to playing the monster. Also performed in regional theater productions of Mice and Men, Les Miserables, Singing in the Rain, Oklahoma, Annie Get Your Gun, Oliver, Peter Pan, and Aida. He performed and working at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, national NFAA finalist, and had the honor to work with Placido Domingo, by the way, because opera's in his family. When he's not on stage, he's doing manly butch stuff outside with craft beers, none of which I know anything about. Please welcome 3 names, Preston Truman Boyd. There we go. There we go. So butch. Okay, we're going to start with like early beginnings because I love to know how everything started. And both of you guys kind of came from like, oh, that's where you're from. Okay, how'd you get to New York? Nick, born in Michigan but raised in Arizona.
Correct.
You did kind of theater life. You sang in choirs.
Sang in choirs. Grew up singing in choirs in Arizona, church choir, Phoenix Boys Choir, and then just started doing community theater.
Well, and you saw a production of Cinderella that was really like, this is what I want to do.
That was it, yeah. Field trip production, saw Cinderella, and I was like, wait, I can do that for a job? I didn't know.
So I didn't know that Arizona had such a thriving theater community. So how did you go from, I really want to be in Cinderella, you just started doing shows in school, you started studying?
Yeah, so honestly, it was, there's a community theater there. There's a couple professional theaters in Arizona. And I was like, my parents knew that I had a passion for it. They knew that I loved to sing. They knew that I, would memorize all the tapes, cassette tapes in the car growing up. Cassette tapes.
You just aged yourself, Valjean.
Very much so. So it was just, let's get him in a choir and teach him how to sing. And then I went to a high school children's theater production when I was like in 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
And that was where I kind of got the bug and was like, I can do that. That's what I want to do. And then the following, I guess, fall audition for like my first kids community theater show.
It was like
and
history.
It was it. That was it.
History was made. And like fun, you went back to ASU in the touring production, so that was like full circle.
Full circle moment, yeah. To go back to my alma mater, and we get to go back again in December, so get to play it again, which
that
is always
must be such a great feeling.
I mean, because that's where I grew up seeing theater. Like, that's where I saw the Broadway tours come through. So I remember sitting out there, like, watching the shows, hoping that someday that was going to be me, and then to be able to stand on that stage and look and see exactly where I sat.
And like all of our theater kids have always had that kind of dream. It's like, I'm going to be on stage. And then, of course, iconic shows like Les Miserables, Phantom of the Opera, which you've done. It's like, that's every kid's dream.
Yeah, I mean, to say that I've done both of those and they were bucket list shows is very cool. It's very cool.
Oh, you're so lucky. Not so lucky. Growing up in Minnesota.
Yeah, a little further north.
Yeah.
Much colder.
Yeah.
I read in one of your interviews that you just always wanted to be the center of attention. Like, that's what you wanted to be.
Yeah, getting a laugh was an important thing for me at a young age, for sure.
Where did you get that kind of sense of humor from? Was it like from watching stuff on TV, or is humor just a big part of your family?
Yeah, my grandfather was a very, very funny man, and he was involved in community theater, and he had a plethora of limericks and different rhymes and things that as a child I would sit on his knee and he'd recite those to me, and I would always thought they were so hilarious. So I love to laugh, therefore I wanted to laugh with other people, and I think that was just something I was drawn to.
And he was the opera singer.
A different grandfather.
The other grandfather.
That was my mother's father. Then my dad's father was the opera singer. Yeah.
So that Thanksgiving Day table, it was like comedian and then from the other side. It's like
musical theater.
Yeah. But then you get the best of like both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, music was a huge part of my household growing up. My dad sang in a band in the 70s. My mom played piano and flute, and so there was always music around. Every Saturday, my dad would put records on, and it was just something we all did together.
I mean, that's like truly, truly amazing to have that.
Yeah.
And you did study opera. You went to Cincinnati School of Music.
Yeah, I went to the College Conservatory there. I went into the musical theater program, but there were always people trying to pull me to the other side while I was there. So I lucked out and was able to study with some opera teachers in the program there while I was at school in the theater program.
So I'm very curious about this. I went to Chapman University, which is here in California, and my scholarship was in the music program. And it wasn't, I was come from musical theater, so I thought music would be like, we're going to learn how to sing and interpret. It wasn't that. It was like the math of music. Yep. It was all of the stuff that took all the joy out.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to make me sing opera and like adjust my voice into something that I just didn't have a passion for. And it kind of just really took that way. So then I ended up in the theater program because I got kicked out of opera because I was like, no, I'm not.
There are less rules in the theater program.
Yeah. So did you kind of have that tug of war because you ultimately went the musical theater way?
Yeah. I when I went down for the National Foundation for Advancement of the Arts and had that week down there with 9 other kids who were really passionate about making this a profession and trying to get the best training and I think it was that week ultimately that I was like, I don't want to do this side of it all, and I was always drawn to the 10 kids in the theater group, and I had my friends over there and so it was, I was like, I think I was really learning something, and very important about singing, but also about what I wanted to do that week. So
yeah. Both of you studied in school. You studied your craft. I want to know, what were your best subjects? You're like, art-wise, like, I nailed this. And what were classes you were like, God, I really suck at that?
Oh man.
We were good at everything. No.
No.
No. Piano. I've always played piano too, but there was maybe like 7 or 8 years where I hated playing piano because my parents had me taking from a classical pianist, and again the math of it all, I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
So I slogged through 7 years of that, and then ended up taking later in high school with like a jazz. She was like, break the rules. Let's play something you want to play. Leave Chopin at the door. That's kind of when my fascination with music theory. Then approaching it from that angle is more fun. So I enjoyed music in that way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so I auditioned for the music theater program at Arizona State, and they didn't take me.
Oh,
Are you
so
kidding?
they're kicking themselves.
They didn't. So
So when you come back in town, you're like,
yeah, he lights a fire every time.
Exactly. So, for me, like in school, I didn't get to take, because the music theater department and theater department were so separate. So I didn't get to take the music theater theory
Isn't that
classes.
weird that they're so separate?
Yeah.
They are so separate.
Yeah.
Now it's blended a little bit more. But so for me, those are the classes that I wanted to take because I had grown up playing piano and learning a bit about theory and stuff like that, and I'm a pretty good sight reader, but those are the classes that I didn't have the opportunity to take, so I wish that I could have taken those classes.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Well, they were hard.
It all turned out okay, so we're
right here.
And you actually played Valjean in high school.
I did, yeah.
I can't believe high schools are doing this musical, by the way.
You know what?
They are doing
When I
it a
think
lot.
back,
They're doing like Sweeney Todd, the high school version.
I know.
Like, what's the high school version of that?
Yeah.
You get a paper cut?
Yeah,
Like, is that what it
exactly.
is?
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
some of these schools are like, screw the high school production, let's go for it. You know?
Yeah.
But it was. I remember, I think back on that once in a while, and it was a much different show. Like I think the Confrontation was cut to like 2 bars, and
It's like, hey girl, and then you walk off.
Oh man,
That just seems like a lot, though. And like the role of Valjean, we know, well, Javert too, obviously,
Sure.
you know. But vocally, I can't imagine even the most advanced high school student being able to handle that.
Yeah.
How did you work through that as a high school kid?
I mean, there were definitely low notes, but it was the keys were changed, and it was. I guess it's the high school version, so it's more accessible to high school kids. But when you think about the subject matter and like a child going through those types of themes and whatnot, it's
And like the prostitutes at the beginning.
Yeah. I'll take 2, please. Yeah. No, it was. Thinking back on it, it's quite a challenge for a high school kid. But yeah, it was fun. And
So usually when we have theater people on the show, we like to share coming out stories. So I want you guys to share your coming out
as thespians,
as straight.
Yeah.
No, it's a real thing.
Sure.
Because people make assumptions when you're in the arts and all of that, and it's like, oh no, and then it's like, it's like wink, wink.
Yeah.
But what are the pressures of being like the straight guy in theater growing up? I know Broadway is now diverse, and it's like that's a thing of the past, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, I caught shit all the time for being a theater kid. Theater kids, right? It's such a stamp. But I was playing a lot of sports in high school. I was in a hockey team and played golf. So I had some friends that were like, "Hey man, leave him alone. He's talented." Which was are still my lifelong friends to this day. But the people that you still think back on your the horrors of high school. Not that anything was so horrifying for me, but it's you have to kind of step up and say, this is what I do, and own it, and I don't think until you do that, no matter what you are, straight, gay, whatever, I think owning the fact that you're an artist and a performer, and that's crazy in itself. I guess that was something I was like, this is what I do.
Yeah,
this
and
is
I
what
think
I'm
then
going
it's
to do.
also like finding your tribe, right?
Yeah,
you find and the theater in general is just so open and welcoming, and so you just find that group of friends that you're like, well, these are the people I'm just going to hang out with.
Yep.
And honestly, like no matter what profession you're in, no matter, there's always bullies out there.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just finding that group of people that you can run with and just be like, this is just who I am, and you can be you, and you're not judged for that.
Yeah, the land of misfits.
Exactly.
Well, today our youth is growing up with different language for being fluid and appreciating the feminine parts of your masculine side.
Yeah.
But growing up, it was like masculine, especially growing up in a Latino home, and then like in a Catholic background, it was like, these are your roles. And I've heard from straight people in theater, it's the same thing. It's like, well, I have to really butch it up just to prove that like I'm straight. It's like, well, no, it's now, now we can enjoy all different aspects of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. 'Cause there is softer sides to Valjean's character, especially.
100%.
You know what I mean? That I have to show that on stage, as well as being this animalistic man at the beginning, and show the softer side of him.
And with Javert too, like the suicide scene, it's like this heartbreaking. It's like we see this man, crumble, and we see who really was beside there the whole time, or behind that the whole time. And it needs that kind of emotional connection. It needs that nuance. Otherwise, you're just seeing a one-tone Betty.
Yeah, exactly.
It does not tell a story, especially if you're sitting there for over 3 hours. As an audience member, it's like, we gotta feel something.
Yeah.
Be honest. Be honest, guys. We're gonna spill some tea. Be honest.
Okay.
Do we miss the turntable in this production?
I mean, I think a turntable anywhere is cool.
I think it would have been fun.
But-
It would have been fun to do.
Yeah.
But I think
the way this show is designed, though, it's has that incredibly cinematic feel to it. The way it's
100%.
lit, the way it's directed, the way it just seamlessly moves from scene to scene. So I think if you come see the show, you're not going to miss it.
Right.
But when a turntable is there, it is very cool.
I joke about it
Yeah.
because Les Mis was one of the first shows that I saw as a kid, and the moment that it was like, it was like before CGI, and it was like, wow, this whole movement is happening. It kind of changed everything, just like at Phantom, when it explodes at the beginning and it assembles. I mean, that's the exciting part, and it becomes part of the show. But I was just kidding about that.
Yeah.
Nick, I want to know, so because I love the travel from where you guys grew up to how you got to New York, and so it's like, well, you went to Japan,
yes,
and you worked for Disney.
yes.
I've heard horror stories and I've heard great things about working in Japan for Disney. We know you walked away with a wife, so it couldn't have been that bad.
I had a great time working for Disney in Japan. It honestly was, and growing up, being a kid that would growing up in Arizona, we were just talking about this. I would come to California to do Disneyland and stuff like that. So to be able to then go and work in the theme park. And my first show there was like a Broadway review show, right?
Fun,
so I wasn't even working with any characters to begin with. I was singing, On the Street Where You Live in a white dinner jacket on top of a fiber optic piano. Like that was my day, 5 times a day. But then to be able to then bring, switch to different shows and be able to work different, characters and things like that, it was a fun time. Yeah. So, and to say you're living in Japan was cool too.
I want to know what that culture shock from Arizona to Japan was like, and what the first few weeks were like.
The first few weeks was you would go into the grocery store and be like, I think this is going to be good to eat. I have no idea.
There was supposed to be moving.
I would say the first month there was a lot of McDonald's because that was just like you knew what to eat.
And they have stuff on their menu that you can't get anywhere else. I'm a little jealous.
Listen, there's some good things over there too.
Yep.
It's never looked better too.
Like a chicken nugget wonton or something.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
They have like plum, like those plum, like cream, like the apple pies.
Oh
They have,
yeah,
like, plum. Yeah.
It's so good. But honestly, the way that I looked at it, I was like, okay, I'm going to live in Japan for a little bit. If I can live in Japan where I don't speak the language and I can get around, then I can move to New York and be just fine. So I was like, this is going to be my stepping stone to finally then make the move to New York. And that's exactly what it was.
What I love, what we hear from our successful actors that come on the show, it's like you have to continually challenge yourself and challenge yourself. So, I mean, that's a huge challenge. I don't know if I could go out of my comfort zone like that. But to like both you guys grew up where there was a thriving theater community, you could have stayed there and been quite happy. But it's like, okay, what's the next challenge? What's the next challenge? Now the next challenge is touring across the U.S., family in tow. That's the next challenge. And I feel like if we don't set certain challenges for ourselves, even as actors, you could have been in Japan right now doing the jazz hands. Not to put that down, but it's like, then, what happens to like the actual acting? What happens to the actual craft when you're hitting it 5 times a day?
Correct.
Are you really honing your skill after a certain time, or are you just phoning it in?
Correct. And by the time that I left, I had, I think I was the only person at that point that had done every singer show that you could possibly do in the park. And I'd been there for like 2.5 years, and I was like, it's time to move on. Yeah. I'm like, as much as I loved performing with what finally did, they were friends and they were family over there. It was like, it's time to make this move to New York. This is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. So let's go.
I mean, talk about culture shock, though. Arizona, Japan, and then New York. It's like, what is happening? And with a wife in tow.
Yeah.
Now, you guys met in line for something?
Yeah, so we were in the currency exchange line at the airport.
So sexy.
Yeah, I know.
That's the rom-com that we need to
and
see.
we had both just gotten off of international flights, so we looked amazing.
They're like, look at this exchange rate. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. That's great.
The dollar's so strong.
It's so great.
But those international flights, like you're sweaty and you don't know how you smell and like your hair is up.
I mean, you've been awake for, hours at that point. And so you're just like, we just met in the line and we just.
It was flirtation?
We kept talking. And honestly, because she had been there before and she she grew up in Michigan as well, but had been working down in Florida. She's like, oh, well, he's a singer in the park. He's probably gay. He's going to be my gay best friend. And I just kept talking to her, and I was like, hey. hey
okay, this is the rom-com, by the way. That's it. It's like that awkward night. It's like, what are you doing? I don't know. What are you doing? And then it's like, bah!
Yeah, exactly.
And now we have children.
Hallmark is watching this. We're going to buy that.
We're writing it now. We're
trademark
writing it now. But yeah, and then it just, we just kept talking. Actually, the day that we were leaving she was going back to Michigan. I was going to Arizona. I was like getting her on her flight, and I'm standing at the airport, and she's like about ready to walk on. I was like, oh, hey, what is your phone number? Because I didn't have her number in the States. I only had her number in Japan. So I was like, I don't even know how to contact you except through like Messenger. So we had to like get each other's phone numbers at the airport.
God, that's so old-fashioned. I
know.
That.
What was your AIM?
Gosh. I won't tell you mine because it's not family friendly.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know. I think it was still like Cartell or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't like, Broadway Lover 93, something like that. Kept it professional.
Yeah.
And your kind of intro to New York was through the music from the School of Music.
Yeah.
They took you to New York to do like your...
Yes. So we... our school, something that was really attractive to me about that program was they have a very high attendance record for their showcases. So every year after seniors graduate, the school brings us out to New York, and then we do like a 2-day showcase, and then different casting directors and agents come and see the show. And then
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's who knows how I would have made my way into the business without that. That's everyone has such an interesting and unique way to get into New York and to get into a podcast like we're on right now. So it's so I had a very great response and met with a bunch of agents literally the week I moved to New York and was signed within 2 weeks and auditioning like
so that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
And that must have been nerve-wracking. Like, do you remember what you sang first?
I sang "The Wind Cries Mariah." And then I sang "Anything You Can Do" with one of the girls in my class, and then "All the Wasted Time," and then a couple group numbers here and there, a little dancing here. You just kind of like a little amuse-bouche. Wanting for more, kind of thing. I signed with my agents, and I'm still with them and love them, and they've been great for me. And
you've been great for them. I'm some stability.
I'm talking to Steve, and he's always in the Hamptons, so things are going okay. Yeah.
I want to talk about both of your first auditions in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing being successful in your hometown, and you're like, okay, I got it. Japan, and like, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
New York auditioning is a whole different beast.
It's a whole different beast.
Can you share like a little bit about your first experiences on some of your auditions? What went right? What went wrong?
Yeah.
So I went to an open call, my first audition, and I was going to sing "Those Magic Changes" from Grease, and it started, and I just was like, see, and I sang it down the octave. And I was like, A.
It's like, is this a Rosie O'Donnell version?
And I was so mortified that I actually came back the next day, and the casting director was like, weren't you just here? And I was like, I sang it down the octave. I'm so sorry. And I didn't know. Like, growing up in Arizona, like, I did not
that takes
know.
Some spunk.
I was like, I've got to try to do better.
Yeah.
Like, and no one had taught me how to audition. Like, I auditioned for CCM, and I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So, like, no one had taught me how to audition. So I remember, like, I took a class with the casting director, and I started singing and looking at her, and she was like, what are you doing? No. Do we have to go back to basics in this class? And I was like, yes, because I don't know how to do this. This is why I'm here.
Yeah.
So I had to truly learn from the ground up, like, how to audition for musical theater, and it was a long journey. It was a journey, at least.
I wonder if not having that heavy training though also helped you as well. Because sometimes it would psych me out when they're like, these are like, you look this way and you look this way, and it's like, it's so much that you forget how to be in the moment and how to perform.
Yes.
I mean, I will say, like, and then I just started taking class after class after class, right? So that's how I actually met a lot of casting directors, was not only auditioning for them, but then taking their classes to be like, what are you looking for? What are you looking for in the room? What do you do? And so that's how I actually got to know people. And then over the course of open calls for 6 years, then finally, made it to Broadway.
Listen up, kids.
That's how it's done.
Take note.
Back in the day.
Yeah. My first audition in New York was for Tale of Two Cities, which went to Broadway for a short period of time.
I remember. Yeah.
And I had got it was like the fourth day I was in New York. I had got a call through my showcase. The casting called me in for it. I totally blacked out in the room. I don't remember what I did. I know I sang because I went to the piano and got my book and left. That's all I remember really. But yeah, it was like. In school and in class, you learn so much about what you should do in the room. Going back to how should you act, and you have that. You have that toolbox, but to have it in your mind and not think about it and just rely on the fact that you know what to do and try to bring all of yourself to that structure, I guess, is kind of now after auditioning for years, it's easier said than done. But yeah. I don't know.
Because also now I feel like when we walk in a room to audition, you know pretty much everybody behind the table, or you know at least the casting, and so there's this. You're going in and you're like, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? Like, so everybody's much. I don't know. It feels friendlier than that first time in because you're so stressed about being like, oh my God, this is my one chance. And it's not. It's not your one chance. It's your first opportunity to then continue to have those opportunities. Yeah.
Well said.
All right, I want to talk about first national tour.
Okay.
Because, again, that's an experience in itself because it's like, I could do a show. I can do 8 shows a week. And it's like, okay, they're going to put you in a truck. We're going to put you in these hotels. Some of them might work. Some of them might not work out. You're with the same people. You're traveling. Then we expect you to do the same amount of shows. And it's a whole different thing. And there's that isolation and loneliness, even though you're with a great company. But you're not with your friends. You're not with your family. You are kind of taken away. Your first was Jersey Boys.
Young Frankenstein was my first.
That's right.
Yeah. I was. It was like the first big job I booked in New York. And I was working at Equinox. I was working at a wine bar. Doing the New York hustle.
I love that.
It was so fun.
Yep. You got to do that.
Yeah,
you got to do that.
Honestly, like those experiences and those times that you have to yourself ultimately is, I think, really has shaped me as a New Yorker and as a person, as an actor, which is so important. But yeah, I auditioned I went into the open call for that actually, and my agents, after I called them, I was like, hey, just so you know, I went in for this, and they're like, oh, we were going to send you anyway. I was like, okay, sure. I'm still new to the city, and they're not hustling for me yet.
Right.
So I went in and got called back, and next thing I knew, they were like, bring your tap shoes. And I'm like, all right, and I've tapped over the years, so to the idea of being in a show like that was so exciting, and then hearing that Roger Bart and Shuler Hensley were going out on the road because they had such a short run on Broadway and they had stuff to pay for. So I know Shuler just bought a brand new house, so
that's the reality,
hey,
folks. Like that's the reality,
Yeah. So I was out on the road and working on a Stroman show, and we rehearsed it from the ground up in New York because there were a lot of changes that had been made, and the company was incredible. I worked with Brad Oscar for the first time in that show, and I've gone on to work with Brad a bunch, and he's a dear friend. And that show ultimately, I've made some really lifelong friends, New York friends. So I first time making money like that on my own and being out on the road and being like, I'll have the finest of this, thank you, and the finest of, being an absolute idiot kid on the road. But it was
that's what I love to hear. I love to hear the mistakes that people, not mistakes, but learning experiences.
Oh yeah, and to be, that was now 14 years ago. So to be touring now in a completely different mindset, but to look back on that and be like, I still have that shirt, or I still, So I had a great time, and then after the year, the idea of staying on the road another year, doing a year is great and a lot of fun, but when you have to kind of mentally reset and be like, okay, here's one more year coming up,
it's exhausting mentally, physically.
Oh my gosh,
it just is.
Yeah, and but I was asked to audition to take over for Shuler as the monster, and I was
that's that journey I want to talk about. Did you trip some people down the stairs? You went from ensemble to lead.
Yeah. Some marbles. No, it was. I was understudying him at the time too, so it was. I had gone on, and Susan Stroman has been so great to me over the years, and she's just the loveliest person there is in the business, and she really believed in me and her team and everyone that was involved in getting me ready for the audition, and people they wanted me to get the role, which is always very helpful. So then I stayed out for another year and some change on it, and putting that on my resume, I think really helped kind of get me to the next trajectory that I had after that. So.
playing the monster must be an interesting tug of war.
Yeah.
Because an actor gets, we get our release, we get that funny line, or we get that big number where we're singing our hearts out, or, we have that touching moment. You don't really get any dialogue.
No.
Where's that I mean, the payoff, obviously, you did a great job, and the reviews were great, but vocally, especially as, like, opera background, it's like...
Well, I could tap into that too,
Yeah.
Put it on the ranch, it's the same animal.
That
as
was for
opera.
free, by the way.
That was for free.
That was for free.
I think I'm in trouble with the union. No. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot. It was fun to be. It's a clown role, right? It's like you have to rely on your physical comedic timing, and really subtle little. And I learned a lot about being subtle, which is hard for me to do sometimes. So just trusting the fact that, me being 6'8" on stage with all that makeup and everything and all the accentuated eye lines, and, it was a lot of fun to be able to just just break the fourth wall every once in a while and get a laugh that way. And it was a new, not using your voice and trying to tell the story is definitely a different challenge. Yeah.
Well, I think it's that subtlety, and with your performance as well, with the whole new production that's touring, it's all about subtlety.
Yeah.
Because with that turntable also came, we had some stunt casting where it's like they have a great voice, and it's like, I'm going to hit every note because this hit, and I'm going to hit every hit, I'm going to sell it like it's a single. And it's like, it's that subtlety that you have to take from scene to scene, from moment to moment.
Yeah.
And it's surprising the audience with new interpretations of stuff that has been sung the same way over and over and over.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
that I think is why it's doing so well, right? That's why people are coming back to see it, and they're seeing a different show. But also, like, I'm appreciative of our directors that are not, all right, well, it has to be, you have to hit it on this line, you have to say it this way, and you have to do this, because there is a world where that does happen, but not with this production. Yeah. It's like everybody's able to make choices and interpret things differently, and which is why also, like, I can continue to do this show after as long as I have done it, because I change things up every night just because I'm like, I'm tired of doing it that way. Let's see what else I can do.
And I feel like when you embody something, a line or a vocal line more that way, it's you're more connected to it anyway than doing it in a way that you've been told to do it. So I think that, like, I had a friend who saw the show opening night. She's like, I heard lines and lyrics that I've never heard in my life, and I said it's because
that's the number one thing I've heard from all my friends that have seen it. That's the number one thing I've heard.
That's great. Yeah. I think it's because we're really able to inhabit those moments more because we're putting it into our body more. And I was able to say to the music director or the music team or the director and be like, I don't think it wouldn't scan that way for me if I was saying it this way. Can I take it out of rhythm a bit? And then they're like, sure, try it. And then they're like, yep, that's great. So I feel like us inhabiting more, it's like what James would say, inhabit the line,
Exactly.
And when we're able to, make it our own, it's much easier to do that. And then that translates.
Cameron always reminds us that it's a play.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a play that has music in it. So we
Did you say at the end of the day?
At the end of the day.
Oh, there we go. That's a clip.
Clip it. Everybody drink. But it's a play, that has music. So those moments where we aren't singing those huge, big musical numbers, we can take them out of context. We can pull them and pull them back and make them softer, or and really bring ourselves into those moments.
And being 9 months in, I'm still finding things that I'm like, I don't need to blast that out like I do. And then I'm like talking to our sound guy. I'm like, hey, Lutz, can you hear me there? And he's like, yeah, man, you got plenty of room.
Some people got you. Yeah. But it's funny. The original production of Les Mis that went on and on and on, it became the joke in New York because the audition wasn't whether you could sing the part first. They literally, what's your measurement? You can fit in this costume. You can fit in this costume. Go, go, go. That was the first initial audition. And, it became not even a secret. And then it was like, okay, how do you look? You look like what we think you should look like? Okay. And then it's like, oh, and then can you sing on top of that? It's like, that's such a weird reversal. Well, that was Broadway at that time.
Yeah.
Now, did you
the mold.
Now, you toured Phantom. Did you kind of have that? Because I know Phantom is run very, by the book.
Phantom is run very by the book. However, the version that I did was this new version that our director for Les Mis, Lawrence Connor, directed. So
there we go.
Again, we broke the mold, right? So it wasn't the the big staircase for Masquerade, right? We were in a hall of mirrors. So so for that production, just like with Les Mis, it's very text. It's like, let's go back to the actual story. What's in the script that we can actually pull? And so it's much darker version than the as we were the spectacular new, and then there was the brilliant original on Broadway, right? And so the spectacular new version, while it had new tricks and pyrotechnics and sets and everything like that, was much more. It was a much darker version of the story than what was on Broadway.
It's a dark story, and it should be. My friend Melina Colomas, I think she's in her 5th year touring Phantom internationally, and she loves it. She's still doing it. Did either one of you see Phantom when it was in Vegas?
I did not. I knew somebody in it.
God, you should have seen it.
I mean, that was an hour. I mean, could you imagine doing Les Mis, the Vegas version, in an hour and a half? Oh my gosh.
And the Vegas version, it was Vegas, by the way. It's like Phantom was like, hello! No, but the whole theater was built for all the special effects.
Yeah.
It was a special effects show with some singing. And then like with one verse of everything, it's like, nighttime sharpens. And it was like,
exactly.
Okay.
They had to cut everything out.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're definitely going to talk about Les Mis. Because it's sweeping in every town you guys go to, come all the interviews, and it's the same kind of questions over and over. So we've heard a lot. And you guys have been asked this question, but I want to ask it a little different way.
Okay.
After coming to the show after COVID, and I don't mean just coming back to the show as a new father, I mean, what personally, having to go through that isolation that we all went through, that kind of fear, especially when you're an actor, what am I going to do during COVID, have a new kid, what personally did you bring back to the show for your character?
Wow.
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
Go ahead.
I want to make sure I really pay respect to this question. I feel like I think I look at everything differently now. Just like Corey was saying in that meeting the other day. Like if there's something that isn't important to me these days, or if I can't find something that is important about it, I try to not bring it in or give it time because I have so much.
It's not worth doing.
It's not worth doing, and because I care about the show so much and the work that I do, I want to make sure that I can bring like my best and most charged self into what I do for work, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it was easy. And, we took everything for granted. I mean, it was so easy to take everything for granted. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I just don't take any moment for granted anymore.
I think yes, like that. And then for me, there's an opportunity here to, like the way that I did my show before, right? Like I had it down to clockwork because I had been doing it for 2.5 years, and while I still would bring myself every day, there was also those moments where I'd be like, okay, well, this is just how it's going to go. Where this time I'm allowing myself more time to find and play on stage because there's a new level of exhaustion that I didn't have last time by having a kid. And so being able to go, okay, that is something that was not necessarily in my Valjean last time, was how tired I was as a person and physically and mentally, that I'm able to bring in and go, okay, how much can I give to this tonight being as tired as I am? And how does that affect the character, change the character? So it's definitely been much more of a journey of like adjusting my performance each show, depending on how it's going, while still trying to give the performance that I need to give every night.
It's a living thing.
Yeah.
But even look at that character, that poor guy. If anybody needs a vacation, he needs a vacation. It's like, and then his vacation is like, oh, I'm dead. Okay.
But in all honesty, like that's exactly what it is. He is. I mean, Valjean is from the beginning. He's tired and beat down. And there's a story that I have told before, but like I remember in rehearsals back in 2017, and it was the first day that we were kind of blocking through the prologue, which is like the first 12 minutes of the show where Valjean does not leave the stage. Yeah. And we got to we were doing it in the day, and they'd be like, okay, great. Well, let's run it again. And I'd be like, okay, great, let's run it again. And they would be like, we just need you to go further. We need you to go further with it. And I'd be like, okay. So my voice was, and then we got to the end of the day. It was like the rehearsal ended at like 6 or 5 o'clock, and this was like at 4:45, and they were like, let's run it one more time. And I was just, I was exhausted. I was beat down. I was so tired. My throat was trashed, everything. And at that point I went, oh, this is where he is at the beginning of the show. This is where this character Valjean needs to be after so many years in prison, all these things. I was like, why couldn't you have learned that like 6 hours ago?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, why couldn't you have figured that out?
Use it.
But it's those moments where you go, okay, now I know where I have to be every night, and that feeling of just being completely beaten down and exhausted at the beginning of the show. Yeah.
Now, both you gentlemen have the benefit of having your family on the road with you, which, like we talked about before the show, usually just does not happen.
Yeah. We're very lucky.
Yeah.
That has to be a double-sided blessing.
Absolutely.
Of course, you want your family there, but I can also imagine at the end of a week on your day off, and you're just like, I am done.
Yeah.
You have to play dad. You have to play husband.
Yeah.
You have to be part of that family dynamic.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Thank God for my wife.
Amen. Me too. Yeah. I think we
have two amazing ladies that really take on enough because I don't want to put the entire load on her because I want to be dad too. But but there are those moments where I'm like, I need to step away, or I need another hour, and she's always there to be supportive of that. And she's exhausted too, but she's mothers are amazing. So
yeah. I don't know where they find the energy and the strength to do it.
Yeah.
And I would not be able to do this if it was not for her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there's a sacrifice that she's also sacrificing by being out here, right?
Too, yeah.
And like they have their own careers and their own dreams and things like that.
And they can commiserate together, which is nice.
Exactly.
I do love that. I imagine them having like Pinot Grigios, they're at the matinee, aren't they?
There is many a wine night, but I think that that's also the thing that's really cool is that like we are finding this collective of our chosen family out here. You know what I mean? That we have that support system, which is beyond.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about mental health, which is a conversation that's really started happening in the last 5 years, and I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Actors are, you get the applause and you get the standing ovations and you hit the notes and it's like great, and you have that kind of energy, but it's a very dark show.
Yeah. And
as we've talked about, you're on stage for, 3+ hours, not to mention the warm up and then the wind down and all that, and then having to travel. And then we talked about, having the family and then playing these characters that, they're tragic characters. They're from a huge tragic novel. All of that weighs in on you day after day, city after city. It's like the turntable that it keeps coming around for you the next day, smack you in the face. So how do each of you maintain that mental health?
I think me acknowledging when I'm mentally drained, instead of just pretending like everything's fine again, but to take those times to be quiet and to, because I'm taking my own life every single night, which is can get heavy, and I try to go there every single night, and I try to really fall apart and crumble on stage, and the energy that takes. It takes a lot of like physical and mental energy, but also at the, I jump off the bridge and I walk off stage, and some nights it's just like, man, it's not fun to go there every single night. It is fun to, I love the feeling of digging deep and giving my all at everything, but sometimes doing that every night can be mentally exhausting, and you start to, I go into dark spots of my inner being that are there from past experiences. And that's the beautiful thing about being an actor is you can, you use life to breathe life into what you do on stage. And some nights it's just, it's tough, but you have to, I again, having my family out here is so important for that. Getting out on the golf course every once in a while is so important for me, being outside. So I just have to check in with myself, I think, and just see what kind of day I need to have tomorrow, and to have something to look forward to that's relaxing, I guess, for me.
And the fact that it's okay to say, no, I need this for me.
Yeah, for me, yeah.
And, the suicide, I remember as a kid, watching Les Mis growing up, and I would see all the productions, and, suicide, it was kind of the exciting part because there was the dramatic, and it's like, well, now Javert's suicide has taken this whole different meaning, especially after COVID. Yeah. We've lost so many of our nation to suicide because of mental health issues. And we see a character like Javert, who is so strong that we think, and here's his mission, and he doesn't feel things, and he just... Yeah. And to know that somebody like this can be so broken behind the scenes, and that's his solution.
Yeah,
it's chilling.
Yeah, and you you hate to relate with people on that
Yeah.
subject as well. And like, I'll be standing on the bridge and I'll see doors in the back opening, and I'm like, maybe someone is going through something right now,
100%.
or maybe
They've lost somebody.
They've lost someone to it. So, it's like to be inhabiting it, but also to have sympathy and empathy for it. Is kind of an odd mindset to be in, performing that. But I try to just pay homage and attention to every aspect of it, and hopefully it shows. But yeah.
I mean, for me, it's kind of so for me, Valjean is very isolating. Mm-hmm. Right? He's a very isolated character from the very beginning.
Yes.
Everybody shuns me, and then anytime that I'm on stage, everybody is off stage, or it's never, you know what I mean? So for my mental health, I'm a very social person.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can tell your social media. I love your social media. I'm
He's
getting
so
ready in
good
my
at it.
suit. It's just so good.
He's so good.
So good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
it's
love
a lot.
it.
It's like
It
another
just brings
job.
me a
I could learn
smile.
a thing or
Another
two.
job. But that's the thing, is that like I'm a very social person. So for me, it's making sure that I don't pull into myself and become isolated. You know what I mean? And to make sure that I try to at least do, because also with what I'm doing every night and singing how I'm singing, I don't get the opportunity to go out and, celebrate or have a drink or stuff like that. So
That's got to be the roughest part. Well, for somebody like me, it's like, we're in this city. Yeah, I'm going to go hit the city,
Well,
and
and that's-
audiences want to hang out with you and buy you drinks.
I would love to, but it's like at the end of the night, I have to go home or else
Yeah.
I can't do the next night. So it's finding those times when I can still be social and still feel like I'm part of the company, because sometimes you don't, for me anyway, it doesn't feel like I'm part of the group.
That's gotta
because
be
it's
so
like
rough.
everybody's going out and I'm like, okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's that loneliness that exists, even though like you are in a big company.
I'm so thankful that my family's out on the road with me, but there are those times where I'm like, Dad needs an extra hour or two in the morning.
I need to
just
sleep like I'm in college.
Yes, I need.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I
100%.
was like, last time I was averaging 8 to 9 hours a night, and this time it's like I'm lucky if I hit 7. Before Paw Patrol comes on in the morning. And
I was up at 6 today.
Yep.
Playing,
Yeah.
reading books.
Yep.
Well, and I love that every moment Valjean, he's either by himself or every time he's on stage, somebody wants something from him.
Yeah.
Like it's always like, gimme. It's like, okay. And then even at the end, because that's like, Papa, you're going to live. It's like, girl, let him go.
Let him go.
Let him take a
Come
nap.
on.
He
At
just
this
said he's
point,
ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
No, I'm not done.
Exactly.
Calm down, girl. I want to know what your creative process was when you got the role. I think back to like community theater. You'd get your highlighter out and you'd highlight all your lines. You'd be like, But what was your creative process? Because, and you have talked about this, but I want you to kind of take a different angle on it. Is, playing a role that we've all seen, we've all heard so many productions. We can hear Cole Wilkinson's every little lift, everything we can hear. So your creative process when the script and the score got in front of you, how did you decide to approach it? What was your process?
Well, for me, it's always physical for me because I'm so opposite physically of Javert. I'm kind of a how's it going, loosey goosey guy, and so and I that's the first thing that I lose. I can be mentally there in a character, but physically I'm just not given it. So it's like in rehearsals and like when I was a kid, I'd come to show up in tennis shoes and shorts and whatever, but like to really embody the character, to dress like him in rehearsals, and it's just the tiniest little things like that help you that you don't realize until someone older tells you or you figure it out for yourself. But I think vocally, and presence-wise, I think I have that naturally, the Javert-ness of it all. But I think just trying to, I had to be very aware of because I come in chunks, and I'm a different Javert in every chunk, but I don't want anyone to see it until a certain point. So trying to find things to charge me mentally and internally while holding this, rigid, stoic presence. It was fun and fascinating to experience. And we had so many directors on the show, which is great because you get so many different takes and angles. You can kind of take or leave, or hopefully take what they want you to take and leave what they want you to leave. But yeah, I think for me it was just really approaching it physically first. And then letting it naturally fall into place, because I think our casting directors did such an incredible job finding every single person, ensemble, principals, orchestra. I mean, everyone is in their in their spot here, and so I was trusting that I had had what it would take to play Javert, but making sure I was keeping myself in line on that journey.
And it must have been a little isolating during rehearsal process because you want to be the goofy clown and make everybody laugh, but then you have to, be in character. That must have been a journey on its own.
And I think that also helps me to keep it on the lighter side, because I could easily, go method with it all. And
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, exactly.
If he was cast as Javert, he'd still be out there with a chair somewhere.
Yes, he would.
So I don't know. I think we're still learning. We're still I'm still finding out things about this character that I hope what I did in the beginning has set me up to keep finding things, and I hope by year 2 we're still. And he is just a dream to be on stage with, because he's so present, and I
try. You know what I mean?
Well, when he's not.
What I was going to say is, what's great is that we had both done the show before, right? So but we had never worked together.
You guys kind of missed each other,
exactly.
Barely,
We
right?
crossed over. So the fact that now we actually get to bring our two versions of this show together, I think, is also what keeps it interesting and fresh and fun. And
totally.
Our little confrontations that we have are so charged that every night it's different. And I think that is what is also fun.
Yeah, it's like I'll turn on the sass sometimes because it's because I feel like it.
Exactly.
But
it's good.
So your creative process when you first
so I went to the book right away, because I was like, okay, there are so many men that have played this role, right? And there's so many. This is your first Valjean, all these things, So I went to the book and started doing that research, singing through the show as much as I could, watching every different possible version. And then at the same time, I finally had to stop doing that and throw it away and go,
because it gets in.
All right, this is now, I'm going to sing this, And so just to be as prepared as I could be. So, and I think that for me, it's also, rehearsing in the boots and making sure that I had coats, and this production is great about being like, what do you need? What do you need in the rehearsal room? So that way we can make sure that you have that. And that was such a big help.
It's amazing just literally walking in your character's shoes.
because you're also, not only, but you're also trying to break them in. Let me tell you, get blisters that first day, and you're like, oh my God, a year of this. But that it's remarkable how much wearing a boot changes from wearing a sneaker. And so you'll rehearse something in a sneaker, and you're like, I need the weight of that. You know what I mean? And I remember Cameron gave me a note one time that he's like, when I came into the factory, he was like, you're too youthful. You're walking too light. You have to remember the weight that Valjean carries, because not only is he's living a lie, but then also just the weight of the coat. And I was like, yep, you're 100%
And he got broken in jail,
right.
by the way.
Broken in jail. So like one of the things that I have in my show is starting in Paris, I start walking with a limp. Because there's a line in the book where Javert recognizes Valjean by his walk and his voice. He said that's an actual line that Javert says in the book. And so I said, well, as I age through the show, then technically I feel like he would start walking with some sort of impediment, and the right leg is the one that I constantly get hit in the show with canes and bats and everything else.
That's so smart.
So it's little things like that you go, what can I do to make it mine? How do and then how can I sing it? That's my version of this show. So
I want to know from both of you, what do you understand about the character now that you played it that you didn't understand before watching it or listening to it?
I think, simply put, for me, he's not a bad guy.
Is he a bad guy?
No, I think most people watch the show and think of Javert as a bad guy, and I think ultimately I was like, I want people to leave this show having loved my character and having really felt for him, because I one of the best compliments I can get is people being like, I wanted to come up and give you a hug when you're on the bridge. So that's I'm like,
that's not a usual reaction. By the way, Javert's played.
Yeah. So I was like, if I can get people to really empathize and sympathize, then that's the journey I want to take him on every night because he is a conflicting character, and he is conflicted, and if I can get people to give him the benefit of the doubt, or to see that to really show how human he is at the end, I think is That's very.
And how many times have we all of us have this where we go after something, we think that that's the ultimate goal, that's what we need, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's, I just need that one thing, and we get to it and it's not it.
Yeah.
And that's so devastating.
It is, yeah.
I think for me, it's that it will change, and it will continue to change every single night. No matter how much I want it to go a certain way, it's not going to go that way. And even though you are trying as hard as you can, there are some nights where you go, oh, okay, that's just not going to happen. You just have to let go. And I think that's the hard thing, especially as theater professionals, is that we want to try to control so much of our careers and so much of the show. And when you finally do let go is when you get to have the most fun, and you also go, okay, well, this is in someone else's hands. You know what I mean? And just, it's going to end how it's going to end.
And that's the point of theater. That's why we love theater. We see productions come and they're all paint by number and they're all by rote. And it's like, well, I could watch Disney animatronics anytime.
Yeah.
It's a show like this where you actually are on the journey with the actors, because it could be different.
Right.
You don't know how it's going to be interpreted. Okay, I have so many other questions, but we have to wrap up. I want to know, what is your favorite moment on stage, personally? And it could be just for a silly reason. It's meant to be like, because it's my big moment. And then what's the most challenging moment on stage where you're like, okay, here we go. This is my challenge.
All right. So for me, the most challenging moment is the soliloquy for me at the end of the prologue, right? Because first off, if I am not warmed up, you are shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
And so there's this moment where I go, all right, hold on, here we go. Where I have to go, are we ready for this? And then part of it is also just being like, yeah, you got to let go, because if you don't, you're not going to sing the notes that you have to sing. Yeah. I think my favorite moment every night has been since the beginning is getting to sing Bring 'Em Home every night. That just for me is there's a moment where I can connect with the story, with myself, with the sacrifices that I think of myself for my daughter, what I had the last time, like all of those moments just kind of meld into one. And it's also the moment that Valjean sits and he doesn't do anything but sits, right? So like every other song, I'm walking or moving or, like it is the song where I just get to sit. Yeah. And there's a power in just being able to sit and sing that song, but also it's a captivating moment for me, getting to, when I've watched it, being like, that's just so captivating to me. So those are my two.
I think one of my favorite things is every different city we're in, when I sing Stars, the house is so completely pitch black, but I get to look up into this vastness, and oftentimes there are little lights everywhere, little like aisle lights or a little usher light, or and it's like every different city I'm in, I have like a different perspective of the stars, which is kind of cheesy and hokey, but I love it.
I love it.
It's so fun. Yeah. So it's like, it's just fun to look up and see different constellations, I guess. And I'm gonna go with my most nerve-wracking moment in the show. And that's climbing up onto the bridge. I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud, because now I'm going to fall off tonight. But
don't say that. Don't say that.
Knock on all the wood.
My God.
But it's like I'm a size 12, and this bridge is like maybe an inch on either side, so I have to nail it every night. And it's like if I am just like a half inch too far forward, it's like I'm singing while I'm on a tightrope. So it's
I'm nervous.
I know.
Better you than me.
Every ride to the theater, every single night, I'm like, I hope I get on that bridge tonight. So anyway, I've only fallen off once in 300 some shows. So.
Knock on wood.
What happened?
So I just stepped up on it, and my heels were too far back, and I just immediately fell back down to the ground, and then I just climbed back up, and it was fine. But it's like I have all these scenarios that I've like figured out that I'll do. Like if I fall off the front, dear God, I hope that never happens. But I'll grab onto it and like pull myself back up dramatically, and so it's just.
I want to see that version.
Yeah.
It was like that one production of Wicked, and the hydraulic lift didn't work. And so I forget which actress, she was on the show and she told it, and so she knew she wasn't going to go up in the air. Like they were like, so she was like, I have to be on stage. So the monkeys and everybody, like,
they have to
squeezing
lay
themselves,
down on the
and
ground.
she's like, just like,
oh gosh.
You got to make do. It's theater.
Live theater.
Yeah,
It's
one
live
night
theater.
my lift, I went up and it usually pulls me back down. But one night, something had happened and it didn't bring me down. So I was just going toward the back wall, and they had to stop the show and bring a ladder out and lift me up off of it. So, yeah, lots of fun.
So true. So yeah,
the play that
glamorous.
goes wrong.
The play that goes wrong, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to spring something on you guys, and I don't like springing stuff on actors, but you guys are fun. When I was a kid, I would listen to the Confrontation scene over and over and over, and I would always be like, okay, this time I'm going to take this role, and this time I'm going to take this role. And so I would just do it, and then I would always, I would do it like 100 times in a row, and I wish I was exaggerating, but I'm not. I would always switch over to Javert, because it's like, I want to know, like, a cappella, you don't have to do full voice, whatever, because I know you have a show later. Do you think you could switch and do the other person's...
Oh, we can try it.
Try it. All right.
So you start, because I usually start.
Valjean, at last we see each other plain. Monsieur le Maire, you wear a different chain.
Before you chain me up like a slave again. No, wait. Wait, listen to me, there is something I must do. This woman leaves behind a suffering child. There is none but me who can intercede in mercy's name. 3 days are all I need, then I'll return. I pledge my word, then I'll return.
You must think me mad. I've haunted you across the years. Men like you can never change a man such as you.
Believe in
Men
me,
like you can
what you
never
will.
change.
There's a duty I'm sworn to do.
No. 2, 4, 6 to 1.
Oh, crash and burn.
There you go. That's the Confrontation
we got it.
reverse.
We should do that tonight.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, God.
Can you imagine?
we joke all the time. We're like, what if we just swapped roles one night? Maybe let's see what happens.
Why not?
Oh, man.
Oh, gosh. That was wild.
I love that. All right, tell everybody where they can find and follow you, Nick.
Oh, sure. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook at Nick Cartell.
I am on Instagram at Preston T. Boyd. The T is for Truman.
Yes. Like I said, the widest name I've ever seen. Les Mis is at the Pantages Theater until September 10th, and then at Segerstrom for the Arts from September 19th to October 1st, then to San Diego, then back up north to California. So please get tickets if they're available, while they're available. And that's it, folks. It's always a grab bag of fun here every week on the Rocks. Big thank you to our engineer, Tony Sweet, our social media clip editor, Alexis Mendez, also Davidson and Choi, and Victoria, by the way. PR to the stars, to the theater stars. Please like, share, subscribe so we can continue bringing this fabulous programming coming your way. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay sexy, and if you drink, stay tipsy. Why not? This has been another episode of On the Rocks. Tweet me and slide into my DMs on Twitter and Instagram at On the Rocks On Air. Find everything On the Rocks for free at OnTheRocksRadioshow.com. Subscribe, like, review, and share. Until next week, stay fabulous.